Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC Tampa. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. And my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay, Florida. Firstly, I want to give a big shout out to all the Floridians, specifically from Tampa, because we know what you guys went through with the hurricane. And I hope that this weekend, having the UFC in your backyard will give you guys, for those that went through irreversible and irreparable damage, I hope the fights this weekend give you a good 8 hours to get your mind off things and let you have some entertainment. And for the rest of us, let's not complain about fights going down this Saturday, because Joaquin Buckley's been on an absolute tear. Now he's got the big step up in competition, which he has earned against Colby Covington. So without further ado, let's get down to business. Main event in the welterweight division. We got the former title challenger and the former interim welterweight champion, Colby Covington. He's 17-4, taking on Numansa, Joaquin Buckley, who's 20-6. Currently, they got it. Joaquin Buckley, minus 265. The comeback on Colby Covington is plus 225. So right off the bat, the odds stand out, because in Colby Covington's last fight, he was less of an underdog against the then champ Leon Edwards than he is now against the emerging Joaquin Buckley. But one thing I always take into account when I talk about big step ups in competition is, has the guy taking the step up in competition, has he paid dues? Has he been tested? Has this guy, shown that he's truly ready for this opportunity? Or is this kind of one of those gambles where, this guy, you're betting on an unknown. You don't know like how he does against this level of competition and all that stuff. And I'm here to let you know right here, right now on Half the Battle, that Joaquin Buckley has not only paid his dues, but he's very deserving of this main event opportunity against Colby Covington in Tampa Bay, Florida at the Amalie Arena. Point in case is that he's already on a tour right now of knocking out the old guard at 170 pounds. Guys like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who challenged for the belt more than once. Guys like Vicente Luque, who at one point was a perennial top 5 guy. And shout out to Luque getting back on track against Temba. And Luque was even a backup for a title fight before. So you go out there, you knock 2 guys out like that, and it automatically puts you on the map for an opportunity against a guy like Colby Covington. It's not like we're dealing with some guy who, he just beat like Neil Magny. Now he's rushing to Colby Covington. No, Joaquin Buckley has beat legitimate top 10, top 15 guys, and he stopped them both. Now he's earned this opportunity. And people criticize Buckley for that Wonderboy fight. I'm not one of those people at all, because Wonderboy has always been a tricky matchup for a lot of people, even at his age, just because he's very unique. He's one of one. You're not going to replicate Wonderboy's style. Maybe the only person that can kind of do it is a MVP, but besides that, man, you're not going to see too many looks like Wonderboy. And honestly, I thought it was a very impressive performance by Buckley. I loved how he mixed all elements of martial arts in that. And, his style, he kind of reminds me of like a welterweight Mike Tyson in a way, just how he's like short, stocky, and the way he closes the distance, uses a lot of good head movement, footwork. And people criticize Buckley's cardio, which I think is insane. Maybe at 185 pounds when he was in the wrong weight class, people will reference the 3rd round against Razak Al Hassan. And, there's been some other moments, but if you're going to reference that, maybe also reference the 3rd round against Nasruddin Imavov. For the times that he looked bad in round 3 against Razak, he looked fantastic in round 3 against Imavov. And these guys, well, not Razak, but Imavov is like twice the man's size. So it was pretty evident this guy needed to drop to 170 pounds. And for him to drop to 170 pounds, that means that you have to put an insane additional amount of road work. And that's why this guy is as well conditioned as he is. I don't buy the rumors that Buckley's a gasser or any stuff like that. Like I said, I've seen him win fights early. I've seen him win fights late, seen him win decisions, seen him do the whole bit. So I'm very impressed with Buckley as a rising contender in the welterweight division. And now's his big chance to be a top 5 guy at welterweight, because Colby Covington, this is not a test that you pass if you're truly not ready for it, because Colby at his best, we talk about the weaponized cardio, but what I like to talk about is the relentless amount of takedown attempts that this guy Colby does in a majority of his fights, man, because Colby's one of these guys, he doesn't have that one hitter quitter, and he doesn't have those kind of boogeyman-esque qualities like a Shafkat does or like a Hamzat does. But what Colby does have is, if you skipped a cardio day, if your strength and conditioning ain't quite on point, if you maybe stuffed a few takedowns, but you're not ready to stuff the next, Colby Covington is going to expose you, and he will do it in a way that's completely demoralizing because his fighting style is very almost like momentum based, and it's like a snowball. Like once he starts getting you to wilt a little bit, that's when he really, really takes over, and you start looking up at the clock. You're wondering, man, why am I breathing so hard? I trained my ass off, and this pace is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. So Colby deserves a lot of credit for the kind of pace that he pushes, the level of competition he's fought, and just who he is as a fighter. I know that some people have issues with the personality, but what you got to understand is, okay, it's one thing to have an issue as a fan or this or that, but when we're talking purely from picking or from betting, leave all that stuff aside. These guys just know how to sell fights, whether they go through tactics that we agree with or not. The big question here, there's the whole, is Colby washed? Is Colby not washed? This and that. I'm not too concerned about if Colby's washed or if Colby's not washed. What I'm more concerned about is how's Buckley's takedown defense and get up game. And from what I've seen, it's on point. I mean, you look at the Duraev fight. Now, granted, Duraev was very hurt, but Duraev was also a lot bigger than Buckley. This is a Dagestani Russian who's been wrestling since he was just a kid, and some of the sprawls in that were absolutely beautiful. And the times that Buckley has been taken down at welterweight, he gets back up immediately. Now, people will say, hey, Alex Miranda took him down. You got to put context in that. What happened in that situation was Buckley was whooping on Miranda to a point where now he's trying, flashy kicks and going crazy. And he threw an insane kick. And actually, when you throw those spins, you turn your back to your opponent, and he got taken down there, but he immediately bounced back up, right? Also, you look at Colby's last fight against Leon, which should be a talking point because it was a very uncharacteristic performance by Colby, but you also don't want to judge fighters just based off one bad night. Like, for example, Vicente Luque had a bad night against Buckley, and then he comes back out there against a guy in Temba who's nowhere near that top 15 level, and he shows that there's clear levels to this stuff. So you can't just judge someone based off one bad performance. But what I will say is that Colby is getting up there in age, and he hasn't been as active recently. And that last fight, to not shoot a takedown until round 3, and people are going to say, oh, but he had a broken foot. I mean, he still had a broken foot in round 3 when he shot for the takedown. He still had a broken foot in round 5 when he got the takedown. The whole broken foot thing, I've seen plenty of fighters overcome adversity in fights. Remember when GSP tore his groin 3rd round against Thiago Alves at UFC 100, and Greg Jackson was like, hit him with it. You know what I'm saying? So fighters will fight through these injuries. And honestly, the fact that Colby survived that fight, I don't know if it's more credit to him or it's more like a knock on Leon for not being able to finish that clearly compromised opponent. But the thing about it is that Leon fights at such a low output, low pace, and Colby in prime form would be able to expose that. Now, Buckley does not fight at a low pace at all, man. This guy is nonstop action. So athletic. His sprawls are on point. His get up game is on point. And I think he's going to have I think he's going to have Colby Covington biting on feints really badly. And I think he's going to hurt him multiple points throughout this fight. The question is, again, it's not about Buckley's conditioning. For Buckley to make 170 pounds, I know that his solid foundation got him in ample shape for this fight. So I'm not worrying about his conditioning. But with Colby, it doesn't matter about how well conditioned the opponent is. When you're attempting a million takedowns, eventually you're going to succumb. But will he have that approach this fight? He hasn't had that approach in a hot minute. But the best Colby Covington, I can see why people would be tempted by this line. The guy that fought RDA, even maybe the guy that fought Masvidal, it was maybe a little bit of a drop down, but was still a clear top 10 guy, right? This is a great fight. The thing that's stopping me from playing Buckley is the odds, the minus 265. Like where's my value at? At this point, if you feel like, hey, Colby can have, some kind of semblance of the old Colby that made it to 3 title shots, won an interim belt, then maybe he's live here. But pure pick, I'm gonna go with Buckley. And if the line, comes down to a point where it's reasonable, I may consider betting him. But I'm not gonna bet him as something absurd like this. Like, be a lower favorite than Leon was, and then I'll be a little bit more comfortable, with a bet. But as a pure pick, I'm gonna go with Buckley. And again, it's not because I think Colby's washed or anything like that. I just simply think that, when we talk about people being washed, that implies that they can't beat guys that they would have once beat back in the day. And maybe that's the case here, but I still think that Colby can compete with top 15 guys. I still think, when we talk, like, maybe Colby will never fight for a belt again. Okay. Is he washed in those terms? Sure. But as far as being washed in terms of like he can't be a top 15 guy anymore, yeah, that's fake news. Because you take Colby out the rankings and start putting him in there with like Neil Magny's and Max Griffin's. Oh, he already fucked up Max Griffin, but you put him in there with like Neil Magny, like Colby's gonna show it. There's still big time levels to this. But again, the reason I like Buckley is because he's not unproven. He has paid dues, and he's actually been in there with a style like Colby back in the day, early on against Logan Storley. And he went through what he doesn't want to go through Saturday night in Tampa Bay, Florida. So shout out Buckley on the improvements. And I'm a fan of Colby as well in terms of like, listen, man, he was on the show a few years back and he was a super cool guy. Like, I know the persona, and he definitely goes below the belt with the family stuff, but I personally don't have anything against Colby. I really don't. Now Jake Shields on the other hand, fuck that guy. But no, but Colby's okay. Colby's okay. You just got to ignore some of the things he says. But back to the fight matchup. I think Buckley's speed, athleticism, takedown defense, get up game, and punching power are going to be the difference here. So for that reason, give me Joaquin Buckley to win his first UFC main event, inject himself in the title conversation, and extend his win streak. Co-main event of the evening in the featherweight division, we got the UFC Hall of Famer Cub Swanson. He's 29-14, taking on Billy Quarantillo, who's 18-6. Currently, they got it. Billy Q minus 155. The comeback on Cub Swanson is plus 135. So this is one of the hardest things about being a fight predictor. I'm acting like I'm like in a third world country. Like, no, listen, I have no reason to complain about anything. But so don't feel any sympathy for me. But what I'm trying to say here, the toughest part about being a fight predictor like me, who's been doing this for so long, you develop so many relationships along the way. You get to meet all these fighters and do all these things, and then they start to like you and stuff. And then it's like, oh, fuck, I got to pick against you now. And obviously fighters are very sensitive and you don't want to hurt feelings, but I also don't want to lie to the fans. I just want to be 100% honest about how I think these fights are going to go down and how I think these fighters match up. And, I'm not here to hurt feelings, but I'm just here to state facts. And I know I hurt a lot of feelings on my This Week in MMA episode 3 when I talked about the DJ versus TJ situation. Guys, listen, I know it's not what you want to hear when one fighter is considered beloved, but facts are facts. And, I'm not going to sit here, look you in the eyes and lie to your face. I'm just going to tell you the truth and how I really feel. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I really do like Billy Q, man. I mean, obviously, if you've interacted with him or just seen how he interacts with others and how he carries himself, this guy's a very honorable man. Owns his gym in Tampa. He's a black belt. There's a hometown fight for him. And he's a guy that tries super hard when he's in there. Billy Q, like, if you're gonna pass the Billy Q heart test, that's a real thing, man. Because one thing about Billy Q is if you're not fully conditioned, if you're not ready to go 3 rounds hard, if Billy Q starts to sense that you're starting to slow down just a little bit, ask Kyle Nelson about that. Ask Gabriel Benitez about that. Ask Damon Jackson about that. Like, Billy Q is known for dragging guys to the depths of the ocean and drowning them. But what does that means that he has to take a lot of damage up front. And the thing about these guys like Billy Q, who I kind of consider to be comeback type fighters, Chito Vera, a very good example of a great comeback fighter. So what does it mean to be a comeback fighter? It means you take a lot of damage up front. And at 36 years of age, which what Billy Q is now, I think people are under the impression that this is like a veteran versus a prospect. That's not the case at all. So to be one of these comeback guys, that means you got to take a lot of damage up front. And the thing about it is Cub Swanson taking his damage up front is just kind of worrisome because Cub Swanson cracks, man. Cub Swanson. And another thing, we were kind of talking about it last week with Duho Choi versus Nate Land, where like, everyone's talking about how Nate's gonna drag Duho into one of those famous, Nate Landwehr wars. I'm like, Duho's in the Hall of Fame for wars like that, and This week, people are saying the same thing. Billy Q's gonna drag Cub Swanson into one of these wars. Guys, Cub Swanson's in the Hall of Fame for wars like that. Like, this is no like surprise to him. And the only thing is Cub Swanson's 41, but I feel like he's a 41 that takes very good care of himself. I feel like, when you watch these UFC fights, and especially the pay-per-views, and you hear Joe Rogan talking about certain things, right? Like, for example, like, Joe Rogan was saying Kron Gracie doesn't look like Kron Gracie anymore. He was saying Chris Weidman, he doesn't like the reactions of how he was getting hit on the ground, all these kind of things. Whereas last fight that Cub had against Fili, Joe was like, Cub looks great. Like, it wasn't looking like, Joe will say, like, this guy looks like a shell of his former self, and this is not the guy we used to know and love. But Cub looked great against Fili, and Fili is a long striker that kind of plays a rangy game. You have to chase him down, whereas Billy Q, a lot more flat-footed, walks forward, is going to give the openings for all those counters. So the concern is Cub, being 41 years old. But again, Billy's not a spring chicken. Billy's 36 years old. Billy takes a lot of damage, and there's like, the thing with these comeback guys, like I keep trying to say, is one day you're not going to be able to take that same damage you used to be able to take. And then what? And then what? When your whole style is predicated on dragging guys to the depths of the ocean and comeback wins, it's just hard for me to see him do that against someone who's going to really dish out a lot of damage. But anything can happen. Like I said, Cub's still 41 years old, but I don't know. I think this is a bad matchup for Billy Q. I love Billy Q. He was on half the battle during the pandemic. He's always shown me a lot of love. I've always shown him a lot of love. And I wouldn't mind being wrong on this and seeing Billy Q get that hometown win, in the co-main event with all his people there. But I low-key think this is a bad matchup for him. I just think that Cub is way faster, way more accurate. And if the whole thing is drag this guy into deep waters and try to do all these things, but like that means you're gonna have to eat a lot of shots in the process. And this fight kind of reminds me of like Cub Swanson versus Darren Elkins, and someone might be like, don't disrespect Billy Q like that. How am I disrespecting Billy Q? Darren Elkins has more wins in the UFC than Billy Q. Darren Elkins was at one point ranked in the UFC. So stop. I'm not disrespecting Billy Q at all. I will say Billy Q is probably a bit more durable than Elkins, but just saying, like, when your whole shtick is like how much damage you can take and keep pushing forward, Cub's not exactly the guy you want to test that against, in my humble opinion. So I'm going to go with Cub Swanson for the upset. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Manel Kape, he's 19-7, taking on Bruno Bulldog Silva, who's 14-5-2. Currently, they got it Manel Kape minus 365. The comeback on Bruno Bulldog is plus 300. So this is a hell of a fight because they're giving Manel Kape someone that's going to fight him. The way to beat Manel Kape is to not fight him, to run around, make him chase you, try to get him into like one of these low output type fights. Then you mix in takedowns and, stuff like that, and just try to kind of weasel him a bit. But when guys actually try to fight Manel Kape and actually try to go toe to toe with him, that's what Manel Kape does his best. And the thing about Bruno Bulldog is not scared of any man. And Bruno is so tough. You saw that fight against Cody Durden. He took a shit kicking, but he kept on ticking, and eventually he got that one back. And now he's got the confidence he's got one of the longest win streaks in the flyweight division. He comes out here and he upsets Manel Kape. All of a sudden, Pantoja's got a fresh new contender. But on the flip side, Manel Kape's biggest issue is Manel Kape. Like, am I going to sit here and say Manel Kape's biggest issue are his incredibly fast hands? No. Am I going to say his issue is, I don't know, any kind of skill-based thing? No. Manel's biggest issue is Manel. That's it. Because Manel's one of these guys that is so overly confident that he truly believes he's always up on the cards at all times. And, that's why, like, from time to time, he'll lose some decisions where he could have won. But, man, when Manel lets his hands go, sometimes he looks like the best flyweight on planet Earth and like a future champion. And in those instances where Cody was really lighting up Bruno Silva, I think those are spots where Kape could take it to a step further because he has a little bit more punching power, a little bit more explosiveness than Cody. So I think those are spots where Manel can actually really hurt Silva and possibly get him out of there. If not, get those knockdowns, score those points, and win the decision that way. Yeah, so Manel pulled his stunt against Mokaev, so I think we're clear next few fights for some good performances. So I'm gonna go Manel Kape to come out here, knock out Bruno Bulldog Silva, and earn a title shot. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Vitor Petrino, the half the battle 2023 rookie of the year, Vitor Petrino. He's 11-1. Taking on Dustin Jacoby, who's 19-9-1. Currently, they got a Vitor Petrino minus 275. The comeback on Dustin Jacoby is plus 235. Vitor, I'm still high on him, man. I know that loss to Anthony Smith will never age well and this and that, but at the same time, no one's exempt from that first L, and all kinds of fighters have had embarrassing setbacks. Jamal lost to Paul Craig. Beneil Dariush lost to Ramsey Nijum and Alexander Hernandez. Like, I'm just saying, like, fighters will have embarrassing losses if you do this long enough. These guys are not superheroes. These guys are human, but the cream will always rise to the crop. The cream will always rise to the top. No, you just got to keep pushing. And I hope that's what I see from Vitor here, that loss didn't derail his confidence, because lots of fighters have certain attachments towards that undefeated record. And once they lose it, certain guys come back. What's the quote about adversity causes some to... Yeah, so the quote is, adversity causes some men to break and others to break records. So we'll see which one of those Vitor falls under. But listen, shout out Dustin Jacoby, man. This is a guy that's had a long career in MMA and kickboxing. And in kickboxing, he was doing his thing. He even got to a fight with Alex Poatan. Now, it was a brutal result, but still, to make it to that point, that shows that he was a high-level kickboxer. And in the UFC, y'all know he's had 2 UFC stints. The first one, he wasn't quite ready. The second one, he had a nice little win streak. He's in high-profile fights. So I'm happy for Dustin Jacoby. The issue is that now he's getting to that point in his career where, you know, he's getting hurt a little bit more in fights. And, like, even in fights that he'll be winning, there'll be, like, these little instances where he'll kind of give away rounds, and then he just got stopped badly his last fight. So with Dustin, I still think he's got the confidence. It's just the durability I'm worried about. And I do think that he can have success in this fight, you know, a little point fighting, you know, get up on, you know, some leg kicks, some slick combinations. But with Vitor, while he might not have the technical acumen of Dustin Jacoby, he's got these freak physical athletes. Like, he's the new school Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa type guy, but at light heavyweight. So yeah, I think Vitor Petrino, if he wants to mix in the takedowns, he can do that. On the feet, I think that while technically speaking, Jacoby's better, I think that Petrino's got big power where he could be getting picked apart, land a big left hook, change the course of the round. So I'm going to go with Vitor Petrino to come out here and get back on track. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a banger between Daniel Marcos. He's 16-0, taking on Adrian Yanez, who's 17-5. Currently, they got it Daniel Marcos minus 225. The comeback on Adrian Yanez is plus 190. I absolutely love everything about this fight except the price. The price sucks, man. Listen, Adrian Yanez, a lot of people might consider him to be a bit of a busted prospect. I don't. I mean, the guys he lost to were top 10 and top 15 at the time, you know, like, again, these things are going to happen. Prospects are going to take setbacks. You can't hold it against them. But what I do have issues with Yanez about is kind of the one-dimensional approach. You know, the guy's got very fast hands for MMA. Some of the best just pure hands in the division. You know, to say he's just a puncher, I mean, that is his bread and butter, but, you know, I do see him throwing some kicks here and there, and allegedly he's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't know under who, but you know, I think Adrian Yanez, like, he went from being everybody's sweetheart to now all of a sudden, you know, people can't stand the sight of him. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy how the fight game works, but I think he's better than people give him credit for. And Daniel Marcos, man, I've been super impressed with him because he's just one of these guys with super high fight IQ that's well-rounded, that doesn't just come in there with one game plan. Like with Yanez, we know exactly what Yanez wants to do. He wants to throw hands, which he's got very fast, accurate hands, powerful hands at that, especially for a man his size. That left hook he hit on Contender Series was like, oh shit, like that was a real left hook. And, you know, you get into pocket exchanges with a guy like Yanez. I mean, you could catch him like Font did. You could also go to the shadow realm like plenty of others have. But like I said, with Daniel Marcos, he's not a specialist, kind of like Yanez is with his hands. Marcos is just a well-rounded, high IQ fighter. He can box, he can kickbox, He can wrestle. He can do jujitsu. He can do it all. So I do think the more well-rounded fighter here is Daniel Marcos, and he seems to have a very bright future in the sport. But again, he is undefeated. No one's exempt from that first L, and the price is kind of annoying. Minus 225 when Yanez wasn't Yanez like minus 175 against Rob Font and minus something against Martinez. Yeah, you could say market overcorrection, or you could say market proper correction. Like, it just depends how you view it. But yeah, I see more past the victory from Marcos, not getting into any unnecessary exchanges in the pocket with the hands, and just kind of kick and run away a little bit, mixing the occasional takedown, and go out there and have a well-rounded MMA performance. But yeah, unfortunately, at the price, it might be a dogger pass situation. But let's see if Marcos goes back down a bit. We might consider something, but if not, at these current odds, it's dogger pass. But let's see where it goes throughout the week. I'm gonna pick Daniel Marcos to come out here and get this dub. Now, guys, I just want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105. Check them out at bet105.eu and at bet_105 on Twitter. They're an emerging sports book that plays the game the right way. And right now is the last week of UFC in 2024. So make sure you'll get some action down. And also, we got NFL. I know MLB is about to start up in the next few months. Plus, before you know it, it's going to be 2025 and UFC will be right back in our lives. So definitely hit up Bet 105. It's crypto only, and they don't make you jump through insane, annoying hoops to get paid out. They don't limit winners. Their odds are on point. So thank you, Bet 105, for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle. And I sincerely hope that you guys enjoy and appreciate the betting experience that they bring to the table. So hit them up at bet105.eu. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Navajo Stirling. He's 5-0, making his UFC debut, taking on Tuco Tokkos, who's 10-4. Currently, they got it. Navajo Stirling minus 800. The comeback on Tuco Tokkos is plus 550. You got a 5-0 prospect at minus 800 making his debut. Very unproven, but he did have a bit of a kickboxing background. He trains with good people at City Kickboxing, and he's got a lot of physical attributes. I mean, that reach, let me double check what that reach is, but that reach is something stupid. He's got to have top 5 reach in the entire sport. Yeah, 82.7-inch reach. Like, we're approaching John Jones territory right there. With a reach like that, it's just about, the transition from kickboxing to MMA is what Navajo Stirling is gonna have to focus on, because someone is gonna try to take him down. Someone's not gonna play his distance game, but he lucked out here against this guy Tokkos, who, look, he seems like a nice guy. He seems funny. I saw in that last fight, he had where he's joking in the fight and it's cute and all, and then he gets choked out like a minute later. And the Zhang Ming Yang fight, I don't hold against him. That guy's about to enter the top 15. That guy's a serious knockout artist. But just the point here, and I mean this respectfully, to make it to the UFC is a huge deal, right? Even to be one of the lower level guys in the UFC, a guy that comes in here and is going to be 2 and done, to even get to that point, you got to show a lot of respect, because tons of fighters don't even get to make their UFC debut. So the fact that this guy made it to the UFC, big respect. But I just simply think that he's one of those guys that, it's gonna be 2 and done, and Stirling's probably gonna knock him out with something. We finally got an exciting Stirling in the UFC. But no, actually, shout out Aljamain Sterling. I'll always call a spade, and that fight against Evloev was a sick fight. So shout out Aljamain. But in all seriousness, this Navajo Stirling, we're gonna have to keep an eye on him. I'm not planting any flags about, because when Jamal Hill made his UFC debut, I knew right away, oh yeah, this guy's gonna be a future champion. Whereas with Stirling, let's take it one fight at a time. But they got him in there against one of the. It's just, you don't want to insult people and say one of the worst fighters on the roster, but we want to be as objective as possible and not bullshit the fans, and just say it how it is. So let's say the truth. And I just don't see Tokkos being in the UFC this time next year. And it doesn't take a genius to pick a minus 800 favorite. And I will not be parlaying him, but I will definitely be picking him, and maybe on some fantasy sports too. You never know, but I'll go Stirling by knockout. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Michael the Menace Johnson. He's 22-19. Taking on Ottman Azaitar, who's 13-2. Currently, they got it Michael Johnson minus 225. The comeback on Ottman, Azaitar is plus 185. I want to meet the guy who's got a positive record betting Michael Johnson fights, like with at least like a 5 to 10 fight sample size, because Michael Johnson is the most unpredictable fighter you'll ever see in all your years watching the sport. I mean, we're talking about a guy, Michael Johnson, who knocked out Dustin Poirier, who beat a prime Tony Ferguson, who beat Edson Barboza in Brazil. But then this guy will also be out here losing fights to the ghost of Clay Guida, to Reza Madadi, the handbag stealer. So my conclusion with Michael Johnson is he can beat anyone and he can lose to anyone. I mean, look at that record, 22-19. So to be comfortable laying minus 225 on Michael Johnson against anyone, to me, is pure insanity. Because how many times have we been like, oh, this is a great fight for Michael Johnson, like the Stevie Ray fight. Oh, he's way faster than Stevie Ray. Like Stevie Ray is older, this and that. Like, didn't matter, you know? So, and there's been like 18 other examples of that where it's just like Michael Johnson has a PhD in letting you down if you bet on him. Now, I would say when I die, I want Michael Johnson to lower me into my grave so he can let me down one final time, but I don't bet on him. So I don't have anything against him. I don't lose money on him because I know better. And then Azaitar came into the UFC with a lot of momentum. It's kind of fallen off a bit. And yeah, Johnson's better than this guy. Johnson's more well-rounded, beat better people, faster, everything. But Johnson has an incredible talent for losing fights that he should absolutely win. So for that reason, I'm going to take Ottman Azaitar for the upset win. Now, also in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Joel Alvarez. He's 21-3, taking on Drakkar Klose, who's 15-2-1. Currently, they got it Joel Alvarez minus 450. The comeback on Drakkar Klose is plus 350. You know, Drakkar Klose, we've talked about many times. You know, he's just solid meat and potatoes, a little physical for the weight class, calf kicks, good at pinning you up against the fence, and good at just edging out close fights, man. Even if he gets hurt, like in that last fight against Neto BJJ, still finds a way to get the win. Whereas Alvarez is a finisher through and through. Alvarez has never won a decision. All 21 of Alvarez's wins are by finish, which is something very, very impressive that you don't see all the time. I mean, 17 submission wins, 4 knockout wins. Joel Alvarez is the definition of a finisher. The issue with Alvarez is that he's massive for 155 pounds, but he hasn't missed weight since 2021. It looks like he got certain things in order. I do think that he's going to eventually go up to 170 pounds because how many times can he keep killing himself to make the weight? But listen, I think Drakkar is going to come out here, some calf kicks, some cage pushing, have some moments like that. But Alvarez is going to have like a big moment, a big elbow over the top, a knee, a submission attempt, something that's going to sway it in Alvarez's favor. Now, if it goes to decision, that might be kind of interesting because Alvarez's history and decision, not great. Close's history and decision, pretty great. So that's what you got to be worried about. But I think there's a chance Alvarez comes out here and does Alvarez things to Drakkar Klose. So while I necessarily can't get behind the minus 450 price, I don't think there's any value there. I will pick Joel Alvarez to win, being just the more dangerous guy who I think is kind of more on an upwards trajectory at this point in his career. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Sean Woodson. He's 12-1-1, taking on Fernando Padilla, who's 16-5. And currently, they got it Sean Woodson minus 155. The comeback on Fernando Padilla is plus 135. I love this fight because they got a lot of similar physical attributes. You know, Sean Woodson's used to being the longer, taller guy in every single fight he is, and that's still the case here. But Padilla, one of the longer guys that Sean Woodson has fought. You know, they got a common opponent in Julian Erosa. But I don't want to hear anyone saying stuff about, well, Julian Erosa beat Woodson, but Julian Erosa lost to Padilla. Therefore, The reason why is this. Both guys hurt Julian Erosa badly in that first round, but anyone that's been watching half the battle or just been watching the sport knows the dynamic of a Julian Erosa fight. Everyone's going to hurt Julian Erosa in that first round, but you must finish Julian Erosa if you hurt him, because if you don't, he'll come back and win the fight. He's done that so many times. Padilla and Woodson both hurt him early. Padilla finished the fight. Woodson didn't. Woodson eventually got finished later in the fight, but that was also in Woodson's early UFC career, you know, kind of paying dues. Now I think he's starting to reach prime form a bit, and guys just have such an issue closing the distance on Sean Woodson. His boxing for MMA is very on point, and he's getting better about the range was always tough to deal with, but I feel like it's even tougher to deal with now, man. And that Caceres fight, that was a very good performance by Woodson until the end where he did start to slow down. But was that credit to Caceres as being such a wily vet really bringing it to him? Or was that a case of the weight cuts are starting to get to Woodson a bit because he's fucking massive for 45s? He's going to, I mean, I could see him at 55s or 70s with a frame like that, guys. So, yeah, but at the end of the day, I just do think that Woodson is a bit cleaner, a bit smarter, but Padilla could have some big moments. I mean, we have seen Woodson get dropped before that Luis Saldana fight, but people shit on him for that fight. I'm not one of those people. Like, maybe it was an off night, maybe not. But to me, the takeaway I have is Luis Saldana, if you've ever watched one of his fights, he's always super dangerous in the first like 7.5 minutes of every fight, and then he slows down. And that was no different here against Woodson. And since that point, Woodson has bounced back nicely. So, yeah, and Padilla, I like him, but I'm still on the fence about certain things in terms of like the output. I'm not, no questions about his heart, his tenacity. The guy's Mexican, and he hits hard too. For a guy that doesn't have that many knockouts on his record, he hits deceptively hard, man. And I think he could have big moments here, but I think that the minutes are going to be won by Sean Woodson. And for that reason, I'm going to take Woodson to win by decision. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got two bantamweights competing at featherweight. We got Felipe Lima. He's 13-1, taking on Miles Johns, who's 15-2. Currently, they got it Felipe Lima minus 235. The comeback on Miles Johns is plus 200. So a lot of people are very on the fence about this price. And I get why, because Miles Johns, he's been on a win streak. He's the more established commodity in the UFC at this point. And Felipe Lima has only had one fight in the UFC. But what you got to understand about it, every Miles Johns fight comes down to the same thing, and that's the pace of the fight. Miles Johnson kind of fights like a Tyron Woodley, you know? He's got the build, short, stocky, huge power. But with that said, the volume is on the absolute low side to a point where it's like painfully low. Like I just watched his last fight yesterday against Douglas D. Silva de Andrade, and like Miles doesn't even like throw a kick until like a minute in the fight, and that's the first strike he throws. Then we have to wait 2 minutes for him to throw his next strike, you know? So it's like, oh my God. But the thing about it is when Miles Johns does connect, guys feel it. Guys get reactions. He's got a nasty overhand right. He's got a nasty left hook, good calf kicks as well. And he's just good everywhere. It's just he fights at a super low pace. And this kid Lima, you might say he's a little green, but for a green guy, he's done things that I like. For example, he's been 5 rounds before outside the UFC at a super high pace. And in that debut against Naimov, which he took on very short notice, goes out there and does his thing. To beat Miles Johns, you must push an insane pace on Miles Johns. And Lima, a lot of the stuff I've been seeing on the regional is a lot of grappling base. He does have some decent stand-up too, you know, some flying knees, some big kicks, his punches, but like I just want to see him tighten up the stand-up a little bit more so that he can fight at that kind of that torrid pace that's necessary to beat a guy like Miles Johns. Because if you have one of these low output kickboxing matches with Miles Johns, you go, I go, 30 seconds of inactivity. Miles Johns is winning those kind of fights all day. And then Miles Johns mixes in a last minute takedown to steal the round. Like those kind of fights go to Miles Johns all day. But if Lima can make this chaotic, stay in his face the whole time, just put up the biggest volume you've ever put on in your entire career and not give Miles Johns a second to rest and not give 2 big reactions when Miles Johns does land those big counters, then actually I do think Lima is going to come out here and cover his price tag, but it's contingent on those things happen. If Lima decides that he doesn't want to come out aggressive and he wants to stare at Miles Johns, then it's a great fight for Miles Johns. But I really think Lima's going to come out here pushing insane pace. We know Miles Johns does not like fighting at high paces. And as a result, I think that Lima's going to win the fight. Now, next up in the women's flyweight division, we got a matchup between Miranda Maverick. She's 14-5, taking on Jamey Lynn Horth, who's 7-1. Currently, they got it Miranda Maverick minus 600. The comeback on Horth is plus 425. So, yeah, I think Miranda Maverick's a lot better than Horth, a lot more experience, paid more dues, more well-rounded, but she's minus 600. That lets you know everything I just said. So like, where's the value at? Is there value at all. I'm not parlaying this girl at minus 600. And while I think she's better than Horth, Horth does have some physical attributes, and Horth is a little bit on the greener side compared to Maverick. Less than half the experience of Maverick. But with these judges, if Maverick doesn't make a statement, these judges are known for doing all kinds of insane shit, especially in Florida where we're at. So yeah, I think the minus 600 favorite's going to win. More tools, better level of competition, better experience, all that stuff. If for whatever reason it's that time of the month, or she got into a fight with her boyfriend the morning of the fight, you never know. Because we're talking about a minus 600. And when we talk about minus 600s, I want domination. I don't want there to be any 50-50 moments or any questions about anything. And when we're talking about minus 600 in a women's MMA fight with the current state of judging, for me personally, that's enough for me to pass. But yeah, I'm going to pick the minus 600 favorite. I think she's better, but with these judges, proceed with caution. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got an absolute banger between Davy Grant. He's 13-7, taking on Ramon Taveras, not Tavares, Taveras, who's 10-2. Currently, they got a Davy Grant minus 115, Ramon Taveras minus 105. So a pick 'em with a slight lean on Davy Grant. And shout out to Davy Grant. I mean, I have so much respect for this guy. He beat Chito Vera back in the day, lost the rematch, but it was a great fight. This guy knocked out Jonathan Martinez. This guy had a 50-50 fight with both Adrian Yanez and Daniel Marcos, who are both competing against each other on this card. So, and he put Rafael Assunção to sleep in Assunção's retirement fight. So, like, Davy Grant, man, he's done some stuff. Word on the street is he's coming off a neck surgery. And, at 39 years old, you don't like to see stuff like that. That could be a sign of the drop off coming soon. And with Ramon Taveras, excuse me, he might be on the greener side. But one thing I want to give him credit for is this guy's got nasty hands for UFC standards, like for like just pure boxing. But I'm saying for UFC, for MMA, excuse me, boxing for MMA, this guy might have some of the best. Like, this guy can box his ass off for MMA. I wouldn't mind seeing Ramon Taveras and Adrian Yanez run it at some point in their careers. But, there's certain things to look out for. I think Davy Grant's got some great calf kicks, and I think that Ramon Taveras, being the boxer, for MMA, he's going to be a little bit more grounded in his stance. So therefore, kind of heavy on that lead leg. That'll leave the openings for those kicks. But in that, if he can time one of those kicks, Ramon Taveras has nasty counters. He's got super fast hands. And he's also close to 10 years younger, man. So it's going to be sad because we all love Davy Grant. I think Ramon Taveras might actually come out here and sleep the beloved Davy Grant. Yeah, it's going to hurt a lot of our feelings. But let's see if Taveras hits a plus 100 or some kind of dog odds, and maybe we consider moving in. But should be a banger while it lasts, for sure. Now, last but not least, in the women's strawweight division, we got a matchup between Josephine Knudsen. She's 8-0, taking on Piera Rodriguez, who's 9-2. Currently, they got a Josephine Knudsen minus 230. The comeback on Piera Rodriguez is plus 195. I love this fight a lot. Listen, Josephine Knudsen, I know I had some choice words about her Contender Series fight, but all jokes aside, she's very, very impressive, especially in the pocket. This girl's got nasty Muay Thai. I mean, if you want to bang in the pocket with Josephine Knudsen, I mean, like, unless your name's like Yan Zhaonan, you're probably going to lose that kind of fight. And that's just the bottom line. Like, I don't see too many girls beating Josephine Knudsen in the pocket. But the thing about it, where you can beat Josephine Knudsen, we'll get to the ground stuff in a sec, but where you can beat her on the feet is Josephine Knudsen is extremely flat-footed. So the way to beat her on the feet is someone that's got good footwork. You have to make Josephine Knudsen chase you. You start doing that, then she can kind of, get a little bit wild, kind of start to get away from her techniques. Then you can level change, mixing a takedown, kind of like Piera did in her last fight against Carnelossi. She was making her chase her a bit, and then boom, level change. And just mixing up all the art is the way where you can have success standing against someone like Knutson, because Josephine Knutson, she only has one way to win this fight. Josephine Knutson is not going to be getting takedowns. Josephine Knutson has to fight at her range, and she's got to get off on her Muay Thai attacks, which are very, very dangerous. She's very, very good. And for someone who, again, only 8-0, less than 10 pro fights, you're going to be seeing these big leaps every single fight. But there was something very alarming in her last fight against Julia Pilastri, where firstly, Pilastri didn't even start fighting until like the last minute of the first round. And as soon as that happened, she took her down easily goes to side control, passes to Mount like it's no one's business, and then just starts dropping bombs on Knutson. And had she made that choice earlier in the round, I mean, who knows what would happen? Could it have turned to a 10-8? Could it have turned to a stoppage? You never know. And then the other times that Pilastri wanted to take down Knutson, she took her down and held her down. Knutson, her takedown defense is okay, but her get-up game is really not leveled up yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if she was a white belt or just got her blue belt type stuff, or if she got her blue belt a while back and doesn't train jiu-jitsu type stuff. Like, because I don't see that fire or passion in terms of, trying to level up your ground game from Josephine Knutson. Piera Rodriguez, she's definitely the more well-rounded fighter here. The issue is that, again, if you bang in the pocket with Knutson, you're going to lose. That's just the bottom line. But can I trust Piera Rodriguez to show good fight IQ? Because, like, for example, that last fight against Carnelossi, that's the best performance of Piera Rodriguez's UFC career. You get the takedown easily. You're about to finish the fight, and then blatantly headbutt the girl, just like, and then she does it again. I was like, yeah, like, this girl might have the IQ of a loaf of bread. It's unreal. Like, you're literally cruising. Couple more punches, you're winning that fight. And she decides to throw a headbutt. Says she was putting her head down, dude. Putting her head down, like boom, like okay, girl. Like, so you got the more well-rounded fighter here in Piera Rodriguez, but she ain't the brightest, man. Like maybe it's not about being the brightest. Maybe she's just mean. Maybe she just doesn't care about the rules. Because I get that from a certain perspective. As a grappling competitor myself, like, I agree that certain rules are fucking, I don't want to get canceled, but you know what word I use there. So this is really tough for me, because the only way Josephine Knutson covers this -230 is if Piera bangs in the pocket. If Piera doesn't want to go for takedowns, then she's going to lose this fight. But if Piera does go for takedowns, the only way Knutson wins is if Knutson has made such big improvements and leaps in her get-up game and takedown defense that now all of a sudden that's a non-factor. But the thing about it is that last fight against Pilastri was in June. So it's not like she's had that much time to fix things up that take a long time to clean up. And even in her post-fight interview, she's like, yeah, I got to work on my ground game. She strikes me as one of those people that, she only goes to the gym to spar, skips jujitsu class and all that. So yeah, the reason why I'm hesitant on Piera, though, is because Piera might not fight optimally. Like, the path to victory is clearly there. Take this girl down. She can't get up. But Piera, being the kind of person who can dominate an opponent and then throw two blatantly illegal headbutts, she's lucky she didn't get DQ'd there. It's like, can I even trust this girl? So I don't know. This is the toughest one for me to call. Usually when that's the case, we got a -230 and a +195. We got to take the dog. So I'm going to take the dog here, but it's contingent on her mixing in takedowns. If she does not mix in takedowns, she's going to lose this fight. So please mix in takedowns, because this girl cannot get back up from bottom, and you can easily win that way. Will she do it? That remains to be seen, but +195, +200, I think there's a dogger pass situation. Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Tampa? My friends, I think that the fight to watch for UFC Tampa is a bantamweight showdown between Daniel Marcos and Adrian Yanez. There's literally zero chance this fight is going to suck. You got a guy in Yanez who's got some of the fastest hands in the division and just likes to go out there and throw down, but he's taking on a guy in Daniel Marcos who's intelligent, who's smart, who comes in with game plans, who can mix things up. And yeah, for that reason, Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez is my fight to watch. Now, who is my fighter to watch? My friends, I think that my fighter to watch, besides in the main event, because I know y'all don't like me bringing up main events as fights to watch, but I think I'm gonna go with Manel Kape. Reason being is that a lot of people think this guy can be a future champion. Pantoja needs new contenders. Like the Mokaev fight, it was what it was, but that threat isn't necessarily here. And in a thin division like this, you get a win against Bruno Silva, who's on a win streak, who's knocking people out. Look how he looked against Tyson Nam and Cody Durden and Manel Kape. Like if you can steal his momentum away from him and do it in an emphatic fashion. Like go out there and get one of your signature knockouts. Don't play it safe. Don't stare. Like go out there and do what you're known for doing. And if he does that, man, not only do I think he's going to win, but I think he's the fighter to watch. Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down this Saturday night live in Tampa Bay at the Amalie Arena. Make sure y'all take it in because this is the last fight of 2024, last UFC fight. And it's a good one, man, to go out on a bang like this. And I want to thank you all so much for all the support that you guys have shown me throughout this year, throughout all the years, and for the love y'all have shown me on my new show, This Week in MMA. Please check it out. Trying to do something different. Trying to deliver the real news, none of that fake news, and give the fans exactly what they want, be entertaining. I know some people got their feelings hurt about certain things that I was reporting, but I only come here to give you the truth, whether it hurts or not. Just want to spit the truth, and that's it. Because we need more of that. Fuck this fake news, but not fuck the fans, not fuck y'all. I love y'all. Y'all are amazing. To support me this many years into doing it, whether it's the old school fans that have been with me since day one, or the people that have come along the way, I'm eternally grateful for both of you. And I'm going to be back next week with Andrew Gombes to give our year-end awards. That show we do every single year. It's our tradition. We're going to have better production for it this year. Going to talk about the knockout of the year, the rookie of the year, our best bets, our worst bets, all that stuff. Performance of the year. There's lots of good categories. Jay Perrin, Jobber of the year, Derek Minner, Stun of the year. Lots of stuff to cover there. And then the week after that, Liam Picks Fights and I are going to do our annual tradition of our top 10 boldest MMA predictions for the following year, this case 2025. So definitely going to do that. And then for the fans, I can't thank you all enough. Please hit the like button, subscribe, leave me a comment, share if you feel so inclined. Follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, at Half the Battle HQ, on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod, on TikTok at Half the Battle Podcast, and then here on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, everywhere podcasts are found. You just type in Half the Battle. And I cannot thank you enough for all the support and love that you guys have shown me throughout the year. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.